Today I'm here to talk to you about Mastodon and give you an honest review of it that gives you the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now you might ask yourself, what is the big difference with Mastodon that sets it apart from other social media websites like Facebook or Twitter? And the answer is that Mastodon is federated and is part of the Fediverse. Now what that means is that unlike Facebook or Twitter, where they're run by one entity on basically one server or maybe a cluster of servers that are the official Twitter servers, instead Mastodon is federated. And what that means is that Mastodon is made up by a whole collection of servers that are run by different individuals and different groups, and there's thousands of these individual servers. And each of these servers runs an instance of Mastodon that holds your username and your password, and then all of these instances are federated so that they can communicate with each other pretty seamlessly across the thousands of servers. So for example, you might be on the default server of mastodon.social, and I might be on another Mastodon run server of, say, mastodon.technology, and we'll still be able to interact with and communicate with each other seamlessly. That's the entire idea of it. Now, the point of this is that it makes it very difficult to censor Mastodon because, yeah, they can censor one server, but then you can just put up another server and run another instance and run it that way. Now, for example, if you're banned in one instance, you might not be banned in another. Or if your instance gets banned, you can just sign up with another instance. And another aspect of this is that where the servers are federated, you can create your own server. And there's actually tons of service, and there's actually even services out there that allow you to do this pretty easily and pretty cheaply, or you can even self-host it on your own computer at home. Another great thing about it, Mastodon, is that everything about it is free and open source. So you can actually, if you really want to, you could actually go look at the source code yourself. But just know that the whole thing is free and open source. And lastly, another great point I wanted to get to here is that Mastodon has literally hundreds of apps. So you can pick from all sorts of ones. Now, personally, I've only tried three, because I've used the Mastodon web interface, I've used the Mastodon official app, and I've tried out Whalebird. So without further ado, I'm going to get in and I'm going to show you guys how it works. So what we have here is the Mastodon login page. Now, when you first go to mastodon.social for the first time, this is the page that you're going to see. Mastodon.social, by the way, if I didn't mention it before, is the main Mastodon instance that is actually maintained by the nonprofit Mastodon. Now, I've heard some people say that they feel that the lack of profit incentive would make this less stable, but my experience in the open source world, this is not the case at all. In fact, I can think of many examples where community-driven nonprofit projects have actually been more stable than their corporate contemporaries. But this is the first screen you'll see. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go to sign up. You go through the ground rules. It's mostly pretty bog standard stuff, and some of it's a little bit, but I won't say I support all of it, but it is what you have to agree to abide by if you join the servers. You hit accept, and it brings you to the sign up page. Now, I've already signed up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit login, and I'm going to put my login in, but you're not going to see that part. There, and now I am logged in. Now, first thing that it shows you is your home, and this is all the people that you follow. You have a little piece on the side here where you can actually write your posts. And on this side menu here, you have things like home, notifications, explore, live feeds, private mentions, which is like DMs, your bookmarks and favorites, and lists. Now, the three that you're going to the four you're probably going to be spending the most time in if you use Mastodon is your home, your notifications, your explore, and your live feed. Now, home and notifications are pretty self-explanatory, so we're going to go to Explore. This shows you posts from all over the Fediverse and allows you to interact with people all over different servers and kind of just gives you a show of what's popular right now. And then there's the live feed, which I'm going to be entirely honest, I find it is completely unusable. It does what the live feed is showing you is everyone posting on your server in a literally a live feed, so like every second. And most of the time it goes by so quickly. Don't know why a little slow. It goes by, most of the time it goes by so quickly that it's actually pretty difficult to interact with. Now, I will get more into the content later, but as an addendum to what I will say later, I do want to say that I think that the variety of languages might be one of the things that will save Mastodon in the future. On the whole, I genuinely quite like the interface, and I think it's very well laid out. I'm also going to take a minute and go through preferences here. This preferences allows you to set things like appearance, and it allows you to slow down timeline too, which is quite nice, although I have not tried that yet. But you have all kinds of options you can explore on the side here, like filters, post deletion. I haven't gone through all of them in detail yet myself, but I have to admit, like I said, on a technical level, I find Mastodon it looks great, it's well laid out, even though I wonder if this kind of Twitter-esque layout, because that's kind of what it is, Twitter-esque layout. I wonder if this is becoming like the default Windows layout with the start menu and stuff like that, almost like a social media equivalent to that. But I think that is a question that'll be answered in the future. So, now while I like the technical side of it, I want to go into more of my other conclusions about the content that I have come across on here, because I find that's where I have found Mastodon to be weakest. Actually, as an addendum to that, one of the things I do want to mention is about major accounts that you'll see come over to Mastodon. So here, I'm going to use a leftist account that I've interacted with before as an example of this. So she's a very popular account on Twitter. I'm not going to say the name out loud, but here you can see someone who is very actively promoting Mastodon, and then the latest post is from like 6 months ago, and you'll find that with a lot of major accounts on Mastodon, and it's very unfortunate that I've shown you guys how it works. I want to get into some of the downsides and whether or not I honestly recommend it. The first is that the anti-censorship is not as good as they say it is. Like, yeah, it's way better than Facebook or Twitter, but they have the Mastodon social covenant, okay? Which means they can which means they have a policy of defederating any server that does not follow the Mastodon social covenant. And if you've read the most Mastodon social covenant, it comes with a bunch of this bog standard stuff like no racism, no sexism, blah, 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 blah. Now, Invictus, you might say, what's the problem with that? Everyone's against racism, obviously. And I think if you say that, you don't really understand how modern censorship works. You see, things like that, what they are is they're post hoc justifications for silencing people that you already want to silence anyway. Okay, so let's say you want to silence someone, you want to censor somebody. Well, all you do is you go through their content and you say, oh, they said this and that's sexist, or they said this and that's racist, and it doesn't matter if it actually is or not, or what they even actually said, because it's a post hoc justification to justify what you already want to do to them, okay? And the Mastodon social covenant gives them this pre-made excuse with these very flexible rules that they can defederate from other servers. That's one thing. Now, I shouldn't be too hard about them on the Mastodon social covenant because they are a registered nonprofit in Germany, and Germany does have extremely stringent hate speech laws, so I can't give them too much trouble for that. Another big one, in my opinion, though, is when Gab came over. Okay, there was a whole thing, and the whole Fediverse kind of blew up for a little while when Gab came over. This was about 5 years ago now, and I'm going to say this outright. I do not support Gab. I actually disavow Gab. I think that they are what Mental Outlaw would call a federal agent honeypot. But one of the things during that whole episode that struck me is how several of the apps deplatformed. Essentially, they stopped showing the Gab instance of Mastodon in their app because they were afraid of being delisted from places like Play Store and the Apple Store, Apple iTunes. Now, I'm not going to name which one because I don't want to get too into it and create a whole bunch of drama, so I'm not going to name which one specifically did this. There was a couple of them, I think. But the problem I have with this is that it strikes me as a little bit pointless of being an anti-censorship app if you're just going to allow the threat of deplatforming from Google or Apple to dictate what content is on your app. that kind of seems to defeat the entire anti-censorship purpose of it. Like, okay, great, you don't run the data through a large server that's run by like this big multi-million-dollar corporation, but you still let them tell you what to do anyway? Yeah, that makes no sense. To completely counterproductive, in my opinion. The last thing I want to get into here, though, is what I think is going to be the issue that's going to really, really kind of sink Mastodon. And this is why I really don't recommend it to people as of yet. See, you can go there and you can try to use it as like a Twitter clone, but the problem is that it only has 1.2 million users. So naturally, it just does not have, that's not even close to the user base that Twitter has. Twitter has like hundreds of millions of users, 1.2 million is quite small. Now, because of this, you're naturally going to expect that there's a lot of communities that are there on Twitter that are just not there on Mastodon. Like, for example, when I was still on Twitter, which I've canceled my Twitter because I got sick of all the porn bots and all the crap and how much it would addict you to just scrolling. So I decided to purge all of that. But Mastodon just doesn't have communities like what Twitter had. For example, Twitter had a very lively, very active MMA community. And I used to follow it quite a bit because I am an MMA fan. When I went to look for something similar on Mastodon, all I found was a bunch of bots that retweet places like places like ESPN, and one site called Fansided, which covers a whole bunch of different sports. The same is true for a whole bunch of other niche communities. So like on Twitter, I was a part of several Irish communities. Nothing like that is there. I was part of I used to be active on Catholic Twitter sometimes. Nothing like that is there. In fact, the closest I found to a Catholic account was, well, it just wasn't very good. I'll put it to you that way. I don't want to say their name and bring even more crap to them or more attention to them, but it was not very good. However, what you will find on Mastodon is US politics. Tons and tons and tons of US politics. In fact, really, outside of a few little niche things, like there's a couple of gimmicky servers where it's like, on this server, you can only use words that start with E or stuff like that, and a couple of photography hashtags, which those were actually pretty good. Shout out to those people. They did good photos. There's basically just a little bit of technology stuff and a whole lot of US politics. And if you're anything like me, every time you hear about the US election, you want to go flying out of a window. That's how sick and tired of I am hearing about US politics. And obviously Mastodon is very left-wing, which is fun, okay, yeah, it is what it is. However, the left-wing content that is on Mastodon isn't even like the kind of interesting left-wing content. It's just endless neoliberal drivel about how great Kamala Harris is. And it's like, oh, insert Democratic politician here is awesome, and insert Republican politician here is evil. And it's the most generic crap ever, and it annoys the ever-living heck out of me. Now, because of this, I have a fear that Mastodon, despite being really, really great technologically, because of its lacking community and lacking content, it's going to end up a lot. I have a feeling, and I have a fear, I should say, that it's going to end up a lot like BitChute, where it attracts this initial niche of people. This niche of people stay there, it continues to cater to this niche. But then because this niche is kind of repulsive to everyone else, it can never grow beyond that niche. So in the case of BitChute, this was like nutty Coast to Coast AM videos where George Norrie is talking about alien bases on the moon or something like that. Except for in Mastodon's case, it's Robert Reich going on about how much better he is than everyone else because he happened to vote for the Democrats. And I'm not even saying this as a Republican. I'm not a Republican either. I just want to make that clear. I'm not a Republican and I'm not a Trump fan. But you want to know what the difference is between Mastodon and BitChute in my example? And this is the problem that Mastodon's going to face. Sometimes if you're in the right mood, listening to George Norrie go off on a schizo rant about alien bases on the moon is at least kind of funny. But when I go on Twitter or on Mastodon, I'm just lectured by Kathleen Kennedy and Robert Reich about how much better they are than me because they voted for the right people, TM. And it's incredibly obnoxious. So because of that, I actually don't recommend you try out Mastodon. I recommend you look for other alternatives instead. And don't forget to like and subscribe and pray every day.